Cold weather used to be a fuel problem long before it was a comfort problem. For most of human history, fuel was expensive, scarce, and labor-intensive to acquire. Wood had to be cut, dried, hauled, and rationed. Coal had to be purchased or mined. Peat had to be dug and dried. Because of this, people did not heat homes the way we do today. Instead, they controlled air. One simple winter air habit, practiced quietly for centuries, reduced fuel use dramatically without furnaces, thermostats, or insulation as we know it. That habit was controlled ventilation paired with deliberate air sealing at specific times of day. This was not accidental or primitive ignorance. It was a learned, repeatable system passed down through observation and necessity. Winter homes were heated by managing air, not chasing warmth. Before modern heating, warmth came from retaining what little heat you already had. Fireplaces, stoves, and braziers were inefficient, often losing more heat up chimneys than they produced in rooms. The solution was not to burn more fuel, but to prevent warm air from escaping and cold air from continuously replacing it. Homes were treated as breathing structures. Air was allowed in briefly and intentionally, then sealed tight for long stretches. This reduced drafts, slowed heat loss, and stretched fuel supplies across long winters. The key habit was short, aggressive airing followed by complete closure. In cold climates across Europe, North America, and parts of Asia, households opened windows and doors briefly during the warmest part of the day, usually late morning or early afternoon. This was done even in winter. The goal was not warmth, but dryness and air quality. Stale, damp air holds cold. Moisture increases heat loss and makes rooms feel colder at the same temperature. By flushing damp air out quickly and replacing it with drier, cold air, rooms became easier to heat once sealed again. After airing, everything was closed tightly. Windows, shutters, curtains, doors between rooms, and chimney dampers were secured. Fires were then lit or banked. Because the air was dry and movement minimized, the heat produced stayed in place longer. This single habit reduced fuel use by preventing continuous heat loss through air exchange. Another part of this air habit was heating only occupied spaces. Entire houses were not kept warm. Interior doors were kept closed. Hallways, stairwells, and storage rooms were allowed to remain cold. This prevented stack effect, where warm air rises and escapes upward, pulling cold air in from below. By isolating vertical air movement, households reduced the constant pull of cold drafts. In practical terms, this meant sleeping chambers were sealed at night, sometimes with additional fabric barriers like bed curtains. These were not decorative. They reduced air volume around the sleeper, allowing body heat to warm a smaller space. Chimneys were treated as controllable vents, not permanent openings. Fireplaces were major sources of heat loss. When fires burned, they pulled massive amounts of warm air out of rooms. Historical households used chimney dampers, removable flue covers, or temporary plugs made of wood and clay. These were installed as soon as fires were no longer needed. Leaving a chimney open overnight was considered wasteful and dangerous in fuel-poor households. This simple act alone could preserve hours of retained warmth. At dusk, houses were shut down. Shutters were closed, not for security, but for insulation. Window curtains were thick and often layered. Door thresholds were stuffed with cloth or straw to block drafts. These were deliberate actions performed daily. Cold air infiltration was the enemy, not low temperature itself. Once sealed, indoor air warmed slowly from retained heat, cooking activity, and body presence. Modern people underestimate how effective this was because they assume thin walls meant cold homes. In reality, draft-free spaces at low temperatures can feel warmer than drafty modern rooms at higher temperatures. This practice works now because physics has not changed. Modern homes still lose heat primarily through air movement. A practical application begins with timed ventilation. Open windows briefly during the warmest part of the day in winter, especially in kitchens and bathrooms. Allow full air exchange for 5 to 10 minutes, then close everything completely. Next, isolate living spaces. Close doors to unused rooms. Block stairwells at night with doors or heavy curtains. Seal fireplaces when not in use. Use chimney balloons, dampers, or tight-fitting covers. At night, Add interior barriers. Heavy curtains over windows and doorways reduce air movement dramatically. Finally, reduce moisture sources. Vent cooking steam aggressively, then seal again. Fuel shortages killed people historically. Efficient air control extended fuel reserves weeks or months. This was not about comfort optimization. It was about endurance. That knowledge is still relevant in grid-down scenarios, fuel rationing, or energy scarcity. If you understand how to control air, you control heat without burning more fuel. That is the lesson modern heating erased, but history preserved. If you found this useful and want more documented, practical historical survival knowledge that still applies today, subscribe to Warfield Prepper Chronicles and share this with someone who understands that real preparedness starts with forgotten skills, not gadgets.